Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala wa ba'd. So inshallah we will be doing the open Q&A, but before that, as Yusufi noted, we wanted to just talk about a project that we're launching inshallah this Ramadan that I believe is a profoundly beautiful project, and it's precisely in line with the prophetic spirit that we've been trying to embody in the space. The project is called Project Ansar. Project Ansar. The Ansar, as we all know in our history, were the dwellers of Medina, those that welcomed the Muhajirun, those who were emigrating from Mecca to Medina. The principal idea behind this project is very simple, is that we want to recreate within this space, and this is a house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we're trying to follow in the footsteps of the beloved sallallahu alayhi wasallam. We're trying to recreate that beautiful brotherly and sisterly spirit that was engendered in that early community. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Hashr, وَالَّذِينَ تَبَوَّأُوا الدَّارَ وَالْإِيمَانَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ يُحِبُّونَ مَنْ هَاجَرَ إِلَيْهِمْ وَلَا يَجِدُونَ فِي صُدُورِهِمْ حَاجَةً مِمَّا أُوتُوا. Allah speaks about the Muhajirin and the Ansar, and He says that those who were dwellers of Medina, the Ansar, and they had already established firmly in their hearts the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. يُحِبُّونَ مَنْ هَاجَرَ إِلَيْهِمْ. They love dearly those who emigrated to them. The Ansar were well-established tribes and families in Medina, and here you have a huge gathering or a huge migrating body of people from Mecca who are landing in Medina, and suddenly the culture shock of Medina was very intense. Here you have all these tribes from Mecca with all these followers of the Prophet ﷺ, and they need to be placed. They need to find sustenance and livelihood, etc. And so what the Prophet ﷺ did, as we all know, is that he embraced this process of mu'akha, where he brought together in pairs members of the Ansar and members of the Muhajirun. Now, this particular verse was revealed, as many of the ulama say, when one of the Ansar, who was of humble means himself, the Prophet paired him with a Muhajir who was from Ahlul Suffa, the poor group of individuals who lived on that small little stage area in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. So when the Ansar took in this Muhajir, and he took him in with a profound sense of love and care and responsibility and trust from the Prophet ﷺ, he went to his home and he asked his wife, "What do we have to eat?" So his wife said, "All we have is the food for the children. That's the only thing we have, is the food for the children." He said to her, "Please put the kids to sleep, put them to sleep without feeding them. And then when I bring my guest in, the Muhajir, when I bring him in, I want you to bring the food and turn off the lights." Right? Meaning what? That he wants the Muhajir to come in, sit down, feel comfortable, see the food coming in, and then turn off the light so that the Ansari will not eat, and to ensure that the Muhajir eats to his fill. And the next day, they woke up, the Muhajir had no idea that this man's family went to sleep without eating anything, that he himself, this companion, did not eat anything, and the only one who ate was the Muhajir. So the next day when they walked into the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet told the Ansari, he said to him, "Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with what you did last night. Allah is very well pleased with what you did last night." And so for us, the importance of this story and the importance of this project is that many of us in today's society, and many of us within the Muslim community, don't feel like we have family. Many of us feel lonely, and we feel like we don't have, a warm embrace when we need it, because we all need a warm embrace. I remember when I first moved to Egypt to start studying in Al-Azhar, I was by myself, and I had an Arabic teacher who himself was a very humble means. He was married and he had 3 boys. And he would regularly invite me to his apartment. And his apartment was a very humble space. A small little, living room, and then inside there was 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. And that's it. So he would invite me over all the time. And he would insist that I would come and eat with him. And so I would go, and him and I would sit in the living room, and his wife and the 3 boys would sit in one of the other rooms. And they would bring out the food. And I would see that for each of us there was, these big pieces of chicken and rice and whatever. And I didn't pay it too much attention. And I would sit there and I would eat. And whenever I felt lonely or I wanted family, I'd just call him and say, what's going on? He'd say, of course, please come. And subhanAllah, much later I realized that he would never cook extra, because they didn't have extra. But whatever portion was for the family, he would make sure that I got my full portion. He would eat, unknowing to me, he would eat like samples, and then he would save some, bring it back to his kids to ensure that the ones who were sharing, each of them got sufficient amounts of meat. And I didn't realize this until like 2 or 3 months into my relationship, that he was doing this every single time we went over. And he would insist that I would come. And I said, subhanAllah, what a prophetic person. I felt warm, I felt loved, I felt cared for. This was a very humble space, but wallahi, the nur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala permeated that home. I would go there to feel the comfort of just being amongst righteous people. And so that spirit that, this teacher, this Arabic teacher of mine really embodied is precisely the spirit that I want us as a community to embrace. And that's where this idea of Project Ansar comes. What Project Ansar is, and inshallah it will be explained momentarily, but basically the general idea is we will adopt one another as community members. That no one in this community should ever feel lonely. No one should ever feel, especially in Ramadan, like they don't have somewhere to go to have iftar. One of the brothers in this community was just complaining to me the other day, as well as Yusufi, that he was in some Muslim community, I won't say where, and it was Ramadan. And he prayed Maghrib with the community and everyone was happy, and then he saw as these families were leaving together, and visibly he could see that they're going to have iftar together. And no one asked him to join. And he sat there, he said, I was so happy to pray together Salatul Maghrib and see all of my brothers and so on. And then slowly everyone left and I was left behind. He said, at Salatul Taraweeh, the brothers who had went to go have iftar together. And one of the guys came to him and said, oh, by the way, the reason we didn't invite you to come is because you're single and we're all families. And he said, wallahi, I wish that he'd never explained to me the reason. It would have been easier for him to just say, we didn't pay attention, we just neglected, we were absent-minded, we were rushing out, anything. But to tell me the reason why you left me behind was because I'm single and your family's like, you're adding salt to the wound. How painful is that? I'm already in pain because I'm single, I'm already in pain because I'm alone, and now you're ostracizing me because I'm single and alone. And that's precisely the spirit that we have to eradicate from our community. So inshallah, I'll have Yusufi come up and explain the finer details of this project, but it truly is a beautiful initiative. I hope and pray that this initiative can be a pilot program here that will spread around the country, where community members really begin to adopt one another, so that to ensure that anyone, because by the way, many of us here, we're Ansar, we're established in Boston. We have a home, we have an apartment, and many here as well are muhajirun, coming from out of the country, coming from out of state, coming from wherever they may be coming from. So what we have to ensure is that we never ever allow anyone to feel alone. and we have to be vigilant and thoughtful, and we have to, reach out to people. If we see someone walking by themselves or praying by themselves and just leaving, and maybe they may be going to a restaurant by themselves, you pull them and you say, you're coming home with me. So inshallah, we'll have the details about the project, and then we'll open up the Q&A for Ramadan bi'idhnillah.
So the lead on this project is Sister Najwa Lamni, and she's going to explain the logistics of how you can be a part of this effort, inshallah. So Najwa, if you want to join us.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So just like Shaykh Yasir explained, we will be working on creating a community fellowship where whoever is interested, all of the participants, inshallah, they would be teamed up with either a family or an individual for them to spend a lot of time with each other and just build that brotherhood or sisterhood bond, inshallah. So to sign up, it would be very easy, inshallah. We have sign-up sheets going around. If you could just put your first, last name, and email address, and we'll send you the link. And the goal is that hopefully, inshallah, during Ramadan, you'll get to meet with your co-Ansari at least once a week, where you make sure that they've had a good week, that they had iftar every day, that they know about everything that's happening in your local community. So if you adopt someone, inshallah, you'll have them come join you to some iftars, as many iftars as possible. And again, you're just gonna go and join them in whatever they're doing, and they'll join you in whatever you're doing. If you're a student and you have an iftar at your school, you can just invite your family and have them join your iftar. We do have, alhamdulillah, a lot of students in the area, and we have a lot of new immigrants, and we also have a lot of converts. So we want to make sure to reach out to everyone and make them feel comfortable. And if you have more questions, you can just ask Haifa or myself at the end of the session, inshallah, and we can explain more.
Jazakumullah khairan, Sister Najwa. And please, there's just a board going around to sign up for this project. Please sign up if you're willing to host. And or if you need a family as well, right? So please go ahead and do that, and Sister Haifa and Sister Najwa will pair you up, inshallah. This is the first year we're doing it, so I'm sure we're going to learn a lot in the process as well, but it is really trying to follow in the footsteps of our beloved Prophet ﷺ, as Shaykh Yasir mentioned, inshallah. So with that, we will start the Q&A session, inshallah. There is for those of you who are online, the number for questions is 774-419-5757, 774-419-5757. So please keep the questions coming in. Again, it's a Ramadan Q&A, inshallah.
طيب, Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. So really, this is completely open Q&A. Any questions you have about Ramadan, any fiqh questions, anything that you're thinking about in terms of Ramadan, spiritual guidance, just please go ahead and ask. The floor is completely open. The one comment I'll make before I start answering questions is really on one of the verses that Imam Muhammad Nabil, may Allah preserve him, recited from Surah Al-Baqarah about the month of Ramadan. And inshallah, next week during the khutbah and in the evening, we'll speak a lot more about the specificities about the month and the virtues of the month and so on. But one thing that always strikes me when Allah is speaking about the month of Ramadan is that He says at the tail end of the ayah of the verse, He says, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. That what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala desires from you and for you, what Allah desires for you with regards to the month of Ramadan is ease. يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. Now it would have been sufficient for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to say what Allah desires for you is ease. And for Him to say, and He does not want hardship, is simply emphasis. That is just emphasizing what He has already indicated to you, and that is that He desires ease. And subhanAllah, Allah brings this in the context of a ibadah, of a type of worship that all of us find to be very challenging. The month of Ramadan, fasting all month, with all of its quirks and so on, we find it to be at times a burdensome ibadah. But what Allah infers and what Allah insists upon is saying, this ibadah is being facilitated for you because Allah wants ease for us. And the way in which Ramadan as a ibadah, as a type of worship is ease, is that when the human being learns to control themselves and discipline themselves, both physically and spiritually and emotionally, to discipline the drive, the carnal desires, when I can control my internal state, my life becomes much easier. A lot of the grief and the anguish and the challenges that we face is because we allow ourselves to succumb to desire very often. This pleasure and that pleasure and this pleasure and that pleasure. And of course, these carnal desires, these nafsani, shahwani pleasures, they never actually satiate us. And they make us very uneasy. But when we become disciplined people and we are able to apply our minds in a way that can condition our bodies, life becomes a lot more tranquil and easy. And of course, the greater ease is the ease that is to be found in the afterlife. Because when we are in a state of ubudiyyah in this dunya, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises us the ease and the bounties and the beauties of the afterlife. So Ramadan is truly a sacred and beautiful ibadah that facilitates for us tremendous ease. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with all of the blessings and gifts of Ramadan. Salam, is there any benefit to listening to a juz a day of Quran in Arabic if you don't know Arabic but don't feel like you have the time to read a juz a day in English? So I'll answer this question in two parts. Number one, is there virtue in listening to the Quran in Arabic? Let me just stop there. The answer is absolutely yes, even if we don't understand one word of the Quran. Because the Quran in and of itself is a miraculous text. The Quran in and of itself is a book that is full of light, full of guidance, full of clarity, full of beauty, full of healing. That is the nature of what the Quran is. And so from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ was that he would sit down and he would call the likes of Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, who was one of the beautiful reciters of the Quran, and he would love to sit and listen to Abu Musa al-Ash'ari recite Quran. So listening to the Quran is from the beautiful sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And to gain the benefits of the Quran doesn't require necessarily that you have an intellectual engagement with the Quran. What do I mean by that? Very often people say, like, the reason why I have this barrier between me and the Quran is because I don't speak Arabic. Right? We say that very often. I don't speak Arabic, so I never feel like I can engage with the Quran. Now, that's a correct statement if what the engagement that we're talking about was an intellectual engagement, meaning that I'm trying to understand the verses, and make sense of them and wrap my head around them. And that's very important, and we should strive to make good translations or ourselves to learn the Arabic language and strive to benefit and gain access. But that conception, it roots out an entire other reality, which is what Allah taught the Prophet ﷺ the first day of revelation. Because when the Prophet was first asked to read, if you recall, when the Prophet was told by Angel Jibreel, read, what did the Prophet say? I don't know how to read. I don't know how to do what you're saying. And he asked him once and twice and three times, and each time the Prophet ﷺ said, I don't know how to read. Now, the Prophet ﷺ spoke Arabic, but the Prophet could not fulfill the command that was being asked of him. So when then was he allowed access to the beauty and the bounties of the Quran? When he was told what? Iqra bismi rabbik. Read, O Muhammad, in the name of your Lord, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when the Prophet read the Quran, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, then the endless bounties of the Quran were open to him. So that is a profound indicator for us that engaging the Quran as it is, in its Arabic text, because that is how Allah revealed it, there is beautiful bounty. And so if you don't know how to read it, then listen to it, because there is tremendous benefit in that. The second part is the issue of, if I don't have time to read juz a day in English, what I would suggest then is read as much as you can in English, so that you can ponder over the meanings of the Quran, because that is amongst the purposes of reading the Quran, as much as you can, to ponder over the meanings. And also have your daily wird, your daily litany of listening to the Arabic, to inshallah gain the bounties of engaging the Quran in the Arabic language. Wallahu a'lam. Yusuf, you want to share? You're breaking the tradition of this halaqa. Go ahead. This better be good. This better be good.
I really apologize. I know this is really terrible adab, and I know
No.
everyone's here to
No, Bismillah.
but I have to share, because on your first point of listening to the Quran, I was driving in the car with Hector. Many of us know Brother Hector, earlier in the week.
MashaAllah.
And we were coming to the masjid, and we both decided, okay, we're going to listen to Quran while coming to the masjid. And of course, you know, he's a big fan of Imam Muhammad Nabil, so he put his iPhone on and we started listening. So about 5 minutes we're listening, and then I told him, Hector, stop. And I said to him, Hector, you know, you don't understand the Quran at all. Why, like, tell me how you relate to it. But whenever I see you, you're usually listening to Imam Muhammad Nabil's or someone's, you know, Quran. And I said, Hector, and I know that when you were growing up, you really liked hip hop. So, like, how do you make sense of this? You know, why do you like this so much more? So he said to me, I just thought so profound. He said to me, hip hop speaks to my intellect, but the Quran speaks to my heart.
Allah.
And he said, it just puts me in a completely different state of mind. And I just thought so beautiful.
That's the truth. That's the truth, subhanAllah. And that's what the Quran is. The Quran speaks to the mind, but speaks to the heart and the soul. And that's precisely what we're referring to as a spiritual read of the Quran. So may Allah bless you and bless Hector and increase him. He's not here. Let's make dua for him. An dhahr al-ghayb. You know, we'll make dua without him knowing, so that the angels will stay above us and make dua for us with the same. So may Allah bless our dear brother Hector, increase him. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide his heart always to goodness and righteousness. May Allah grant him a righteous spouse. Ya Rabbil Alameen. And that one Imam Muhammad Nabil will make, inshallah, in Taraweeh. Right, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Tayyib, the next question. The questioner is asking about breaking the fast by intentional sexual relations. By intentional, oh no, this is, hold on, by intentional sex. Okay. So this is not, so let me just address this whole issue of sexual intercourse and sexual engagement and how it impacts and hinders the fast. Intentional sexual relations in the day of Ramadan is an extremely big sin. It is a huge sin. Breaking the fast intentionally during the day of Ramadan outside of sexual relations is a tremendous sin. According to many, Ibn Hajar al-Haythami says, min al-kaba'ir. It is from the gravest of sins to break the fast of Ramadan during the day intentionally. And so if any of us have broken the fast intentionally during the day of Ramadan, ask Allah to forgive you. May Allah forgive us for ever having broken intentionally the fast of Ramadan. And especially if it's done through sexual intercourse, that is the gravest way of breaking the fast of Ramadan, because the overwhelming consensus of scholarship is that if the sexual act happens, the full sexual act happens in the day of Ramadan, then that requires a full expiation. For the majority of the opinions, it's you have to fast 2 months consecutively, 60 days consecutively, and if you can't do that, then you'll have to pay the fidya, the kafara of 60 masakin, 60 poor people. Right? So that is the kafara, that is the expiation required for that. Now, the questioner is also talking about sex talk via electronic media, and that was happening during the day of Ramadan, and that caused for some light discharge and not full, ejaculation. Now, light discharge, if it happens because you're engaged in an intentional kind of sensual conversation or even touch without the full-on engagement in sexual relations, that in and of itself also invalidates the fast, right? It invalidates the fast, and for the majority of scholars, it doesn't require an expiation the way that the actual sexual intercourse does. However, for the Malikis, and for any of the Malikis in the room, and you all know that I'm Maliki as well, any intentional breaking of the fast during the day of Ramadan requires full expiation. So the Malikis are the most intense when it comes to expiation. But with the Malikis, they allow you to choose whether you will do the 60 days of fast or paying or feeding 60 poor people. So, Wallahu alam, if this person engaged intentionally in sexual discourse with their spouse or someone, and it led to a secretion from them, then this invalidates the fast, and there should be asking Allah for forgiveness, as well as repeating that day in another time. Okay, mashallah, the questions are flooding in now. Tayyib. The what? What do you mean if it happens multiple times? In the same day? Every single day of Ramadan is independently sacred. And so every single day of Ramadan requires its own expiation. If it happened on the first day, the third day, the fifth day, the 10th day, each of those days require its own independent treatment. But in this regard, if it's not full-on sexual intercourse, then for the majority of the madhahib, it will just be that you have to make up those days, but knowing that that was a sinful act and it requires istighfar, it requires tawbah, seeking forgiveness and repentance. The story of the Ansar and the Muhajirin is very touching but also conflicting. It's one thing to sacrifice yourself, but what is the balance when sacrificing your kids' wealth, wife's autonomy? I mean, that's an interesting consideration and question, and none of what happened in that story is an indication of someone who's trying to undermine his family or not take care of his family, but someone who's trying to number one, his wife was in full agreement, so his wife was not doing this qahran, like without her agreement in that process of feeding the muhajir. This is an example of a story that for us should be inspiration. That shouldn't lead us to say, okay, well, I can sacrifice my children, right, and allow them to starve just so that I can feed other people per se, or that I can renege in my duties at home just so I can feed other people. No, the Prophet ﷺ said that everyone has a haqq. Your body has a haqq, has a right, your family has a right, your community has a right, and make sure that you give everyone their due right. And so the basic spirit should be that we make sure that we take care of our family's rights, but at the same time that we all realize that we have a communal obligation towards one another. And there are rights that we have to fulfill for each other, right? And it's not just about me and my own, right? I gotta take care of me, I gotta take care of my own, and you go do you. That's not the spirit of our religion. It is much more communal than that. So we'll leave it at that, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Okay, there's someone who asked me, but this is a very convoluted, the questions are coming in, so it's one long question, but for some reason it's chopped up. So it kind of looks like hieroglyphics. But what I can decipher is that, okay, I can decipher one question, which is, can a woman hold the Quran with iPod or iPhone, can continue reciting? So there are opinions that do allow for a woman on her menses to hold an iPad or an iPhone to recite the Quran. So that is a valid opinion amongst our scholars, because it's not the Mus'haf, it's an iPad, right? We don't call the iPad, and it's like, hey, you have an iPad. Yusufi, give me your Mus'haf, and I'm pointing at his iPhone. It's not a Mus'haf, it's an iPhone. On it is an application called a Quran app. So many of our scholars have said that it is jaiz for a woman on her menses to hold that, inshallah. Tayyib. Next question. Ramadan is so much more than just fasting from sunrise to sunset, so how do we best explain the entirety of Ramadan to non-Muslims who are curious? I would say that, number one, Jazakumullah khair, this is a beautiful question, and I will refer you to Imam al-Ghazali. Imam al-Ghazali, when he speaks about the inner dimensions of Ramadan, of the fast in particular, and you can find this in his Ihya Ulumuddin, Revival of the Islamic Sciences, he speaks beautifully and profoundly about what Ramadan is as a worship. And central and essential to the notion of Ramadan is the conditioning and the disciplining of the self. It is spiritual elevation, because the entire journey of spirituality, if you recall when we spoke about ihsan, when we were introducing the sphere of lived spirituality, we spoke about how the essential purpose of ihsan, of spiritual excellence, is what? Takhliya and tahliya. Takhliya means to rid oneself of behaviors and vices and actions that are displeasing to Allah, and beautifying oneself with all of the actions and behaviors that are beautiful in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Ramadan, what Ramadan does is it conditions the human being and teaches the human being that you do have self-control, and you can discipline yourself, whether it's your private parts or your belly, which are the two organs or the two spaces where much of the vices of human beings happen. It's in those two realms. And that's why, in our books of Tazkiyah and Tasawwuf, they will say, Kasru shahwatain, breaking the two sources of pleasure. And that is the private part and the belly. And so Ramadan is now restricting those and putting kind of a temporary seal on that. But what is then being opened? The doors of remembrance. So if those avenues are closed, Allah is saying, now open up your heart, open up your tongue to remembrance, open up your ears to listening to the recitation of the book of Allah, open up your eyes to looking only at that which is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So your entire spirit then is being elevated. Because when you want to explain this to Muslims and non-Muslims, we are deeply spiritual beings. That's the nature of the human being. And the nature of the human being requires that we satiate our spiritual needs, and that we are much more than just a body. And so Allah is teaching us how to realize some of the highest elevated qualities of the human being. And that is when we tap into our spiritual state. We become people of iman, people of ihsan. And that's much of what Ramadan does. Because a lot of the vices, a lot of the oppression, a lot of the evil that we see rampant in society today is what? Is rooted in the indulgence of the carnal desires and the lower self. Right? The Prophet ﷺ says, Da'ul umam, the disease of nations, al-hasad wal-baghda, envy and hatred. And so much of the people who are in pain today, who are oppressed today. Just today I was coming here and I was listening to NPR, and they had a panel talking about some of these statues and some of these kind of commemorations of people from the Confederacy. People who were proud slave owners, who loved slavery, and the biggest pain of their existence was that slavery was taken away from them, right? Slavery in that form, of course, slavery exists in other forms today. And so the panel was talking about how there are still people today who are saying that we need to celebrate, Chester Arthur III, slave owner from the Confederacy, because he's my forefather and I want to honor him, right? And so you can see at the root of this person's motives is something very ugly. It's a type of self-centeredness and ego. Someone who's okay with others having been enslaved and raped and pillaged and murdered and killed. All for what? For a celebration, for a statue. There's no discipline in that soul. There's no discipline in that nafs. And so as Muslims, we are people who are deeply concerned about disciplining the self, because a nafs, a self that is unrestricted, is remarkably destructive. That's why the Prophet ﷺ says, أَعْدَى عَدُوَّكَ, your worst enemy, النَّفْسُ الَّذِي بَيْنَ جَنْبَيْكَ, the nafs that is within you, that is your worst enemy. Externally we have the shayateen, we have the shaitan, and internally we have this nafs. And so perhaps those are some ideas that can be of benefit while speaking to your friend. When I had my child, I didn't fast 1 month, Ramadan, and now he is 7. I didn't get the time to fast, and last year I didn't fast 15 days. Okay. A person who didn't fast, because this sister is saying 1 month of Ramadan because of, I guess, the pregnancy, and now he's 7 or she's 7. Now, because we allowed multiple Ramadans to pass without making up, and when there was there was an opportunity to make up, meaning that the person, for example, was back to their health and could fast and didn't, and allowed for another month to pass, then this person has to make up the days that passed and pay fidya. Fidya is the amount that is to feed a poor person based on their local circumstances, based on you as an individual. So let's say me living in Boston, what would it take to feed a poor person? And this may distinct, so you can say, for some have say maybe $10 a day, maybe $15 a day. So roughly between $10 to $20 a day is the range where you want to be. And based on that, so 30 days, and so you would pay that fidya, but you would also make up those days. So you're only paying the fidya once. Although it was 7 years ago, you're only paying the fidya once, but you still have to make up those days. And I didn't fast 15 day. I'm not sure when exactly you didn't fast. If it was just the past Ramadan, then you just have to make them up without paying fidya. But if you didn't make up these 15 days that you had to fast, for example, from last Ramadan, and you allowed, and based on the 15 days I'm assuming are for something else, like menses or something, then if you allow for a Ramadan to pass without, inexcusably, so it's allowing for a Ramadan to pass without an excuse. If that is the case, then you have to make up and as well pay fidya. And these questions are specific to circumstances. So don't take what I'm saying and just run with it. Okay, every circumstance, this is how it's applied. No. Because it differs between if you have a genuine excuse or no excuse, if it was for pregnancy, if it was for breastfeeding, if it was for fear over the child. Each of those have their different rulings. And tomorrow during the Sisters Only session, we will delve deep into that, because that's a very common concern. Fasting is very difficult for me in terms of feeling physically weak and having reduced sleep. I see other Muslims soar in their worship during Ramadan, but I see mine increase only incrementally due to physical weakness. This makes me almost nervous about Ramadan. Could you provide some words of encouragement and advice on how to have a more positive attitude about Ramadan? Inshallah, next Friday during the khutbah and the evening, right as we're kind of ushering in Ramadan, I will speak extensively about this topic. But just very brief words, I would say this. The Prophet ﷺ tells us that every single worship that we do, whether it's prayer, whether it's hajj, whether it's paying zakah, each of those ibadat, those worships that we do, they have a prescribed amount of reward. Except in the Hadith Qudsi, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِلَّا الصَّوْمِ فَهُوَ لِي وَأَنَا أَجْزِي بِهِ. Except for fasting, for verily fasting is mine. Allah says, and I am the one who recompenses, I am the one who rewards for the fast. And so one way for you to spiritually situate yourself is to say that all of these pains that I'm feeling, all of this difficulty, and of course with the summer months, mashallah, I had someone the other day telling me, I'm here for Ramadan, and what time are you going to be breaking your fast during Ramadan? So I said, was it like 8:20 or something like that? So I should have stayed back home because we break at 6 o'clock back home. But subhanallah, with the extended time, the reward is only multiplied and the reward is only increased. And so what I would say is try to situate yourself in a spiritual, intellectual space of saying, every single moment that I am in pain, Allah sees my struggle and He is magnifying my reward, right? Because He sees me in my state and He knows how difficult the fast is for me compared to other people. And that's true, by the way. For some people, the ibadah of fasting is an easy ibadah, right? But for that same person, the ibadah of praying tahajjud may be very difficult. But for some people, praying tahajjud is easy, but fasting is extremely hard. And so Allah divvies up in people's arzaq in that way. But put yourself in that mindset that the reward is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what is in store for us in Ramadan is beyond beautiful. And that's what I'll illustrate next week. It is beyond beautiful. The amount of reward that is in store, the protection, the forgiveness, the Jannah, the heavens are beautifying themselves just for those who are coming into the month of Ramadan. That the shayateen are locked, the heavens are open. I mean, just endless bounties. And so you're entering into this spiritual sphere, spiritual zone. As soon as, may Allah bless us with the month of Ramadan. Let's not take for granted that somehow we're going to arrive at next Saturday. That's not given. Allah may take us as we're leaving here tonight. May Allah elongate our lives and give us good health. But Allahumma balighna Ramadan, and may Allah allow us to intend from this moment that we will fast during the month of Ramadan. Because the urgency that we should have, because that month is coming and we know what Allah has in store, that excitement is what should overwhelm us, right? To compel us to say, I will handle whatever physical agony may be in store for the fast. So try to elevate it from simply just being a physical action, but being a deeply spiritual one. I have a question. I was born Muslim but never grew up praying and reading Quran, and I want to start by being on top of my deen and teaching my children. Help, I don't know who to ask, please and thank you. Well, I would love to meet you in person, but you have myself and you have Imam Abdul Malik who can help you, inshallah. So that person, whoever this person is, please do reach out to either of us, and inshallah you'll be able to sit down and talk about your life and your history and what's going on, and hopefully we can grow on this journey together. And it's always a beautiful moment for me, and I know Imam Abdul Malik will agree to this, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has opened someone's heart for guidance, it's always spiritually very nourishing, because it's an upliftment to see how Allah guides hearts, and you see how people who convert into Islam, or people who maybe have been away for a while and come back, and you see the desire and the thirst to grow and learn. That is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful gift. And this person, whoever you are, I would say thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for opening up your heart to guidance, and inshallah you have a lot of help here. So reach out to myself or Imam Abdul Malik for any help and questions, bi'idhnillah. What do I tell family members, friends who are surgeons or studying for major medical exams when they say they can't fast during Ramadan due to the demands placed on them from their jobs? With a fully loving heart, full of compassion and mercy and care, not an excuse. Exams are not an excuse. Take it from me. I had to take my Azhar exams during Ramadan in Cairo when it was 1,000 degrees, and as you can see, I don't do well with heat, right? But there is no conception in our fiqh in our legal tradition of not fasting the day of Ramadan, which is such a sacred day, like I started off in the beginning, to pass an exam. On top of that, what I will tell you is this. All of the pain and all of the agony and all of the difficulty that may come with the fast, I promise you will be a source of barakah, a source of blessings for your exam. So many of our predecessors went into ghazawat, expeditions, battles, long journeys, all happening during Ramadan. You look, subhanAllah, so many of our historical moments in our seerah that were essential and thereafter happened during the month of Ramadan. And all of those companions and pious predecessors for generations, even when it was in the heat of battle, they didn't break their fast. And so I know that taking an exam is to us a battle and it's a huge agony, and we feel the pressure and the stress, and we feel like the world depends on passing this one exam. Get a good night's sleep, eat a lot, have a good cup of coffee before suhoor, take your vitamins, take whatever you need to take, but fast and rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah bless us to see the beauty of what Allah has in store for us. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Okay, I think I understand this question, but the question is a medical one about taking medicine, and this person has to take medicine, and that fasting may be a risk for them and their well-being. The basic rule of thumb when it comes to illnesses and fasting is go to a trustworthy Muslim doctor who will advise you on whether or not you should fast. And I say that very explicitly, trustworthy Muslim doctor. And mashallah, if you don't know one, talk to me, talk to Yusufi. Alhamdulillah, our community is full of wonderful Muslim doctors. Yes, Haifa. If they are the nurse or the doctor, what has to prescribe medicine to someone? To what? To a Muslim patient. Okay, regardless, the rule of thumb is very simple. If a person is ill in a way that it may lead to their detriment of their body in any possible way, whether extreme fatigue or fainting or exacerbation of whatever illness, then that person should not fast. Should not fast, okay? And so a trustworthy Muslim doctor should be the one to advise you on that. And the reason I say that is because in our healthcare industry, medical malpractice is of tremendous concern to doctors. Doctors are terrified of being sued by patients. So every single doctor will always err on the side of caution. And that's why if they'll ever say, doctor, should I fast? No, don't fast. Because no one is going to take a risk. That's why I say speak to a Muslim doctor that you trust, tell them your condition, and if your condition requires that you really don't fast, do not fast. And if a person needs to take pills, if they can somehow facilitate them, before suhoor and after iftar and so on, this is all circumstantial. It's based on the person and what their circumstances are, then try to do that. But if you must take a regimented kind of dosage of pills and you can't break that regimen, so it must be every 4 to 6 hours, or this devastating effect to your human body, whether it's extreme fatigue or fainting or exacerbation of whatever illness you have, then don't fast and take your medication. And inshallah, if you can fast at some point, just make up your fasts, right? So as soon as that restriction is removed, that's when you should try to start making up your fasts. Wallahu a'lam. Can someone hold the mushaf during Taraweeh? I know this is always a big problem in communities and people get all worked up. People want to snatch musahif from other people. It's a difference of opinion, and you know me, it's a difference of opinion. MashaAllah, we have the most diverse community in America, right? So, some fiqh opinions say, do not busy your hands, don't be distracted, keep your hands where they should be and focus on the imam. That is a strong fiqhi opinion, and that is a very valid one. And also, some scholars have allowed that during nafil prayers, right, during the non-obligatory prayers, that you can hold the mushaf. And that is jaiz, and it's not blameworthy, and it's not problematic. So if that helps you in your taraweeh, and you're focusing with the imam, that's fine. But, and my brother Ayub tells me about this all the time, if you're going to do that, make sure you respect the mushaf in your transitions. You're not putting it on the floor. You know, if you have a small one, you put it in your pocket, keep it in your hand, but don't just lay it on the floor. Treat the Quran with a level of adab. And we'll leave it at that. I know this really pains people in our community, right? I see it all the time. But alhamdulillah, our deen is beautiful, and there's a difference of opinion, and we'll leave it at that, inshallah ta'ala. Which is? Cell phones. I agree with Brother Ayub on the cell phone one. Okay. And the reason being is this. This thing is so distracting, right? And the light is distracting. But also what's distracting about it is you get a pop-up message, you know, you get a news feed, you get CNN telling you breaking news, you know, Trump is speaking to Muslims about Islam in Saudi Arabia, and Toby Keith is going to be serenading the best. So you see that and you're praying behind Imam Muhammad Nabi, and it's like, you know, so I would say if you're going to use a mushaf, use an actual mushaf, and don't use your phone. It's a distraction. You know, you may have an impulse, and it's like, oh, something popped up, and you check it, right? Or you'll be, you know, anxious to see, you know, what's happening. It's a distraction. This thing is a distraction, whether you're praying or not praying. So my advice, my sincere advice is don't use your phone. Use a actual mushaf. Someone works in this Okay, so this is also an important question. This person is asking about having a job that is physically extremely strenuous, like construction, out in the middle of the day, like a day like today. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve us from the hellfire, Ya Rabbil Alameen. That person is saying, you know, what do I do? The dabit for strenuous work, the dabit means the conditional quality, the thing that you should think about is whether the fatigue or the difficulty, the physical agony will lead to some sort of physical distress. So if your fasting will lead you to faint, break your fast, right? Don't continue to fast. So you're working, it's hot, you're dehydrated, you're sweating, and you begin to get dizzy, drink some water, right? Get a Gatorade or something. Don't sit there and don't push. It's not healthy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want us to destroy our bodies. لا تلقوا بأيديكم إلى التهلكة. Don't hurt yourselves. لا ضرر ولا ضرار. You know, don't harm yourself. The Prophet ﷺ says in a hadith, don't harm yourself and don't harm others. And so, if your work, now it's not to say people, because this is the distinction. People say, I work in a difficult job, so can I just break my fast? The answer is no. The answer is, however, if you are someone who is working this difficult job and you feel that you're reaching a breaking point physically and that you're about to faint or so on and so forth, break your fast. Okay? Wallahu a'lam. This is like a few years back, there was this whole controversy about the Muslim teams fasting during the World Cup and Ramadan and all that stuff. SubhanAllah. Of course, the fatwa is don't break your fast, right? If you feel that you're going to faint or whatever, because of the illness, you may break your fast because of the illness, not because of the strenuous work. That's not an illah. That's not an effective cause in breaking fast. It is the actual possible pain or distress of the body. Okay, that's the same question. if the period is long, unusually long, the max amount of days for a period should be 15 days. That is the max. So if your period goes beyond 15 days, then you should, regardless of whatever state you're in, stop and pray. Okay? Now, there's some dawabit to that. 15 is the excess, but let's say, okay brothers, 1 second. Let's say the average cycle is 7 days. And this time you find yourself going 8 days, 9 days, 10 days. What the general opinion is, go with your average cycle of 7 days and then count 3 days. At that third day, that's when you start praying, right? So if your average is 7 and you find yourself this time going towards 10 and it's not stopping for whatever reason, then at 10, that's when you stop and that's when you start praying. 15 is the max of that, right? You understand what I'm saying? So let's say next time you have your menses and it's 10 days, right? That maybe becomes your new norm. And now 10 days pass and you find yourself 11. So go 11, 12, 13. 13, what do? You start praying. The max is 15. So you never go above 15. 15 is where you stop and you pray at that point. Is that clear? If it's not clear, come tomorrow to the sisters only session. We'll tease that out further, inshallah. If I pay for my mother overseas for not fasting due to the health issue, do I have to pay equal to the country of her resident or here? Now there's a difference. If you are responsible, if you are monetarily responsible for your mother, right, then you pay it according to your capabilities. So if your mother is if you are monetarily responsible for her, then you pay according to what you can pay. Wallahu a'lam. I think surgery is different than exams as you are dealing with another's health and life in your hands. That's out of context for me. I'm not sure. Is that about? Yeah. Oh. So this surgeon is saying, I may harm someone? Okay, I got it. Okay. Listen, the same logic applies. The same logic applies, right? If you're 4 hours into your exam, right, and you feel that you're becoming incapacitated in some way to continue with this surgery, break your fast and continue your surgery, right? But preemptive measures are not really found in this capacity. So what you have to do is you have to assess your circumstances, because there are people who can work comfortably operating, and I have many doctor friends and many doctors in my community who can do this for periods of time. It really is about your personal circumstances. If you're breaking down 2 hours in, 3 hours in, take a break, break your fast, or break your fast and continue. But it can't be a standard rule that I'm a surgeon, I have someone's life. And surgeries are obviously different, right? There may be, a nuanced heart surgery, and there may be, some sort of reconstructive surgery or ligament surgery or something and so forth. So the same basic logic would apply. I've been looking for a book to help me in my reading of the Quran, to help define the words. A group of books to help understand the context of the Quran was revealed in, so on and so forth. I'll advise this person with 2 things. Number 1, my opinion, one of the best translations to have in your library is the translation by M.A.S. Abdul Halim. I've said this many times. It really is one of the better translations of the Quran. It's simple, it's colloquial, it's easily understood. He also has other books, the same. He's a professor at Oxford, and he's also, a well-trained scholar. He also has books about intro to the Quran and basics of the Quran. So you should also get his books on the intro to the Quran. And I would also suggest the works by Nu'man Ali Khan. Nu'man Ali Khan, mashallah, he did Quran cover to cover, right? My whole family is registered in it, and they, use it with all the time. And I think may Allah increase him. It's a beautiful initiative that he did. And so, use Quran cover to cover. gain access to it, and you can, he has finished the entire Quran, right? He's done the entire Quran, so that will be of great benefit to you as well. If I find myself doing travel, a couple of weeks, I might travel during two. Okay, so in terms of traveling, just basic laws of traveler and fasting. The basic rule of thumb is that the traveler can break their fast. However, the traveler can only break their fast if their travels begin before suhoor. Before Fajr. That's when you can not fast that day. However, if your travels began, right, and this is the overwhelming majority opinion. If your travels begin, this is the majority opinion. If your travels begin, for example, sometime during the day, then you have to continue that day. So you have to, because you started the day in fast, you cannot just exit fast, right? You fasted so only if you're traveling, so schedule your travels before Fajr, so in the evening or before Fajr, but during the day, you cannot. Now, your destination, if you are there for 4 days or less, then you're allowed to break your fast, right? Because that is the travel. So the travel is the day of the travel, 4 days while you're there, and 1 day of return. So that's the max, and there are obviously some details within the madhahib of this, but this is the opinion that I give. So while you're there for those 4 days, you can break your fast, technically. However, it is high, Allah and His Messenger have always taught us to take the allowances, the rukhas, except in Ramadan. Ramadan is the one thing that it is, and the Prophet ﷺ says this, it is recommended that you fast even if you're traveling. You're allowed to break your fast. So it's not haram if you break your fast. It's not sinful if you break your fast. But it is much better to fast if you're in travel. Okay? This is the one time in our ibadat where the rukhsa, right, is not recommended to be taken, where the allowance is not recommended to be taken. Wallahu a'lam. If you can't fast because you are sick, do you have to pay money and give money for iftar to the community, or the rule? No. If you are sick, and I'll come to you right now, okay? Is this about the previous question? All right. We'll get back to you. If you are sick, and by the way, sniffles is not sickness. Having a light cold is not sickness. I'm not, okay? Having a light cold is not sickness, right? That's tolerable. So illness is, like I said, something that is very physically debilitating, that it will hurt your body if you continue to fast. It'll have major impacts on you and lead you to major physical distress. If that is the case, and that is a temporary thing, then as soon as you can, you make up your fast, and that is, inshallah, sufficient and okay for you. Whereas the elderlies who will never fast, because that's it, they cannot fast, their medical condition will never allow them to fast, then they pay the fidya. They pay that amount of money, because that's it, they will not fast. But in this case, because you can make up your fast and you have a genuine excuse not to fast, which is the illness, so as long as it's before the next Ramadan and you come back to your full health, within that year you can make up the fast, and that's all you have to do. But if you surpass in that till next Ramadan, when you ever cross over to a next Ramadan inexcusably and not having made up your fast, that's when the fidya kicks into effect, right? That's the basic rule of thumb. So it's when you allowed for days to pass inexcusably. Same thing for sisters on their menses. This happens very often. For whatever reason, just didn't get to it this year. I had a few days from last year, I didn't get them this year, whatever happened. If inexcusably you allow for the next Ramadan to come, that is blameworthy, so it's sinful, and you have to pay the fidya, and you still have to make it up, right? That's the basic rule of thumb. Yes, Musafir question. Although I have like 30 more questions here, but go ahead. Let's make this quick. What is that, sorry? It recommended, highly recommended. How many what? Uh-huh. No. That's also a very good question because it's a very common question. The beginning of your fast is connected to the sun of where you are, and the breaking of your fast is connected to the sun of where you are. Right? That's the rule of thumb with starting and breaking fast. You are with your sun. Right? So you follow your sun. Wherever you are and wherever your sun is, that's where you start or you break your fast. Okay? And the same thing, sometimes we'll say, oh, you know what? People say, I got in, my flight lifted off at 9 a.m. and I had a 30-hour journey to China. Right? Can I break my fast? Same rule of thumb. If the physicality, if you're becoming overwhelmingly agonized, distressed in your body because you cannot continue, then break your fast and make up another time. But try to schedule that flight before iftar so that you can, before fajr or after iftar so that you can have the rukhsa of breaking your fast, because that is tayyib. Allah bless you, Shaykh. Ameen. May you find peace and blessings from Allah. Ameen. Oh, that's the end of the question. All right, let me go back to the beginning. I thought this was just dua. This is beautiful. If we do physical... I'm not sure I understand this question. You're doing physical work, i.e. labor. So I think I spoke about the physical thing. How do we maintain physical health for elderly people, i.e. walking or running? I'm not sure I understand the question. Can you rephrase that question and send it back, inshallah? Jazakumullah khair. Does backbiting, yelling, and anger or using bad language negate your fast? Yes and no. Yes and no. Why do I say yes and no? Backbiting, yelling, fighting are extremely blameworthy acts. And what type of fast do they break? They break the fast of the heart and the fast of the tongue, right? And the fast of the soul. Because the fast, as Imam al-Ghazali says, the fast of the khawas, the fast of the elevated people, are those who fast from everything other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And qawlul fuhsh, saying putrid and ugly words during Ramadan, is a very, very ugly thing, and it's very blameworthy. But it does not technically break your fast in the sense of that you have to make up that day. Those words do not break your fast, but it does break your fast in the spiritual sense, right? In the sense of it's a blameworthy thing. That's why the Prophet ﷺ says, if someone comes and they yell at you or curse at you or anything, what do you say? Inni sa'im, I am fasting, I am fasting. Meaning that I can't even get into this conversation. If you know you're going to lose yourself, because for example, let's say I know I'm a hothead, and if someone gets into with me and starts talking about Trump, I'm going to lose it, right? Then inni sa'im. Someone says president, you say inni sa'im. Someone says Trump, you say inni sa'im. Right? I don't want to talk about that stuff. I want to fast. One of the beautiful adabi qualities of our ulama is this notion of fudul al-nadhar. This is a beautiful concept. They say that in Ramadan, make sure that there is nothing that is idle that you're engaged in, whether what you're listening to, speaking about, or even looking at. So you may be driving and say, oh wow, that's a really nice house. MashaAllah, that's beautiful. Yeah, one day, huh? Right? And then you say, don't do fudul al-nadhar is not good. It's not healthy. Fudul al-nadhar means that you're just like aimlessly, looking at things, because all of that does what? It impacts, right, the soul and the heart. So try to restrict yourself as much as you can. So may Allah forgive us for ever speaking in a manner that is displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I have a heart problem. I'm not sure if I can fast. Speak to a trustworthy Muslim doctor. If you don't know one, you can come to me, come to Yusufi, come to Imam Abdul Malik, come to Sister Hayfa, and we inshallah will advise you with someone that you can speak to about your condition. Is sleeping from after Fajr to Dhuhr okay? It makes fasting easier? It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's not. These are long days, and if you're doing it now, my advice to you would be this: do it with good intention, right? Do the same thing you're going to do, but do it with good intention. Say, Ya Allah, I'm going to sleep because I really want my body to be rested, so at night I can comfortably pray Taraweeh. So that after Asr, I can comfortably sit down and read my juz of Quran or read some of the Quran. Put a positive spin on this, because there is a way to put a positive spin. Yes, for many, they would wish, those who work, starting at 7 or 8 or 9 a.m., I mean, may Allah protect them and help them. Those are going to be very difficult long days. But if you have this capacity, do it with the intention of a taqwiyah ala al-ibadah. Right? Because that is amongst the intentions of sleep, is at-taqwiyatu ala al-ibadah, so that I'm strong enough to worship. Do we have contact for female Muslim doctors? Yes, we do. We have Dr. Sarah King, who runs the Ummah Health. Yes, Haifa. Please do what? health@massboston.org. So email health@massboston.org, and inshallah, Sister Haifa will answer all your questions. Dr. Sarah King will answer all your questions. Dr. Sarah King, may Allah bless her and increase her and be pleased with her. She does wonderful work for our community. So let's make dua that Allah blesses her and her family and her kids and her beloved and beautiful husband, Buraq, who is a gem, who started a beautiful project of doing iftar every other Monday night. And he's always encouraging all the community to come. So may Allah, what a beautiful family. May Allah increase them and bless them always. Ya Allah. طيب, I missed 4 Ramadan due to pregnancy. I tried to make up those days that I missed, but I still owe 45 days. What do I need to do to make up the days I missed? So may Allah bless you and increase you for repeating. Now, the 4 madhahib of fiqh are all of the opinion that regardless of the reason of why a person missed their fast, you should make up your fast. Okay? So for this person, these 45 remaining days, put the intention that you will fulfill them, insha'Allah ta'ala. Put a schedule and try your best to fulfill those days. Okay? Because yes, 44 Ramadans are, roughly 120 days. It's a lot of days. But the fast of Ramadan is such a virtuous fast. And there are minority opinions that say if the amount of Ramadans that have passed are many, like 3 or 4 or 5 or above, then a person can pay fidya in replace of that. But really, that is not my opinion. I say opinions in full transparency, because the 4 madhahib of fiqh, the Shafi'iyya and the Ahnaf and the Malikiyya and the Hanabila, they all say that you have to make up your fasts. So for Ramadans, inshallah, intend to make up those fasts. If any of Ramadans passed when you had a chance to make up your fast and you didn't, right? And your fast of and you're breaking your fast during your pregnancy was due to you worried about the well-being of your child, then you should pay fidya as well. Okay? And there's a lot of distinctions in this, right? So and also as a rule of thumb, just because a person is pregnant, and I say this very often, doesn't necessarily mean that you should break your fast, right? Yes, it is jaiz, it is allowed with the condition that this is something that is needed for you, for your own physical well-being, or for the well-being of the child, or for both. So if that's the case, but that's why also consult a Muslim specialist who can help you kind of make sense, right? It is jaiz. If you broke your fast because of pregnancy, it's inshallah fine. But it's not an absolute rule of thumb, because there are people who can be pregnant and fast, and this happens all the time. So make sure that you you ask someone before you choose to break your fast. But for more details, come tomorrow morning to the sisters only session. We'll have a lot more details, especially about this issue, because it's very convoluted. Not convoluted, it's just very specific. It's not convoluted. What should I do if I fall asleep during prayer? Particularly tahajjud or tarawiyah. Like full sleep? If you knock out cold, then Brother Ayub is going to take care of you. No, if you knock out cold, if you fall asleep, if you half sleep meaning that you're still half conscious. If you're half conscious and meaning that like you're in sujood and you're kind of dozing off, but the Imam says Allahu Akbar and you get up, then inshallah you can continue. But if you're in sujood and you're out, right? Then you need to go, renew your wudu and come back, inshallah. So the dabit, right, the quality that should be considered is how is like the level of sleep. If it's like you're beginning to doze off like some people do during my classes, it's like you're in that state, and my father used to just throw chalk at people, but I don't do that because I can't. That's my father's role. But that if you're in that state and I just say hey and you go like this, then inshallah you're fine. You can continue praying, but not if you go out. I'll tell you, it's 9:45. Am I supposed to stop? I'm supposed to stop. I'll tell you, but I have like 20 more questions here. Taib, go ahead. You're the last question, I guess. Yalla. Bismillah. I'm putting all the blame on you so they don't blame me either. I'll repeat his question. Go ahead. Yeah, they say he fasted 9. Yeah, roughly 9. Next Friday night, we're going to talk about the prophetic Ramadan. So that's actually what next Friday night, as we're entering into Ramadan, we're going to talk about the Ramadan of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So inshallah, we'll leave it at that. If you have any more, I know I have like 15 more questions here, but please come to me during my office hours. You can email me, contact Hayfa, and if you're a sister, please do come tomorrow to the Sisters Ramadan Q&A. Saturday, May 20th, 10:30 a.m. to 1. MashaAllah, you have 2.5 hours of Q&A, so may Allah help us. Musalla 110. This is called Musalla 110? Did you know that? This is called Musalla 110? I didn't know that. That's news to me. All right. MashaAllah. Takbir. طيب سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept from us this gathering, to bless us all on this evening. Ya Allah, Allahumma ballighna Ramadan. Oh Allah, bless our Sha'ban and allow us to worship you during the blessed month of Ramadan. Oh Allah, purify our intentions. Give us hearts and minds that are fully submissive to you. Oh Allah, guide our hearts towards you. Make Ramadan easy for us. Make ibadah easy for us. Help us to fast every single day in a manner that is pleasing to you. Ya Rabbil Alameen, forgive our sins and our shortcomings. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.